one and all. Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Anderson Reynolds. Welcome to Roof Tropics Media, broadcasting from the island of the Twin Peaks, the land of giants, the country that has produced the highest per capita of Nobel laureates in the world. Special greetings to the diaspora. Did you know that according to World Bank statistics, for the past few years, remittances to St. Lucia have been averaging over $40 million per year? Yet this may not include or reflect the flow of goods the diaspora ships to the island. And the numbers do not fully capture the importance of the remittances, because one suspects the remittances are sent when the need is most critical, most crucial, such as around Christmas time, the opening of the school year, and during times of greater hardship, as in times of disaster. So special thanks is due to the diaspora. A special welcome to our fellow St. Lucians living abroad. Please keep up the good works. This morning, we have as our special guest a St. Lucian that probably requires no introduction. We have Mr. Cassius Elias, who will be sharing his thoughts on St. Lucia's food security problems and on what the country can do to increase and stabilize its fisheries and agricultural output. Besides being a pioneering businessman and a consummate community development advocate, Mr. Elias served St. Lucia as the parliamentary representative of Micoud South, as Minister of Agriculture, and as ambassador to the overseas territories, French territories of Martinique, Guadeloupe, and French Guyana. Unlike most public officials who usually fail to leave behind a published account of their personal and professional life, Mr. Elias has 2 books published, Enough is Enough, and parliamentary speeches, documenting his private and public life, his accomplishments and aspirations, and his admonishments for the country. Mr. Elias's contribution to the nation has not gone unnoticed. The father of the nation, Sir John Compton, characterized him as a pioneer who blazed the trail for others to follow and who prepared the platform upon which others can build. In 1985, he was awarded the Rotary Club's highest honor, the Paul Harris Fellow, for outstanding community service. In 1886, he was awarded the British Empire Medal for services to small business development. And this year, 2022, he was awarded the St. Lucia Medal of Honor for eminent service rendered in the field of agriculture and community development. Mr. Elias, welcome to Roof Tropics Media. Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Anderson Reynolds.
Thank you, Doc.
So glad you are here with us this morning. So glad you are still willing to answer the call to service.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm at your service.
Mr. Elias, just 2 weeks ago, as I mentioned, we watched as the nation bestowed upon you a national award, the St. Lucia Medal of Honor for Eminent Service, rendered in the field of agriculture and community development. Given your extensive involvement in the country's business, political, and community life, I must say it was an award well deserved. What did receiving the award mean to you? What was the experience like?
Well, Doc, thank you for inviting me to dialogue with you on the topics of food security and fisheries and possibilities. The award last week meant a lot to me in the sense that it was an award bestowed upon me by my St. Lucian colleagues, my St. Lucian government, and people with whom I have worked and collaborated with over the years. And it is good when your country, as opposed to the Queen of England, for example, recognize your worth and in the process say thank you to you for your contribution. I would like to thank the government of St. Lucia, the awards committee, and persons like yourself and Modest Downs, whom I know played a significant role in preparing the usual information and background for these awards. And I urge the committee and the government to find a way to recognize more of the young and outstanding St. Lucians who blaze the trail for others to follow. And I hope in the years to come that more young people would be honored. Not prematurely, but I think they make a significant contribution that should not go unrewarded or without notice, if you like.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. Mr. Elias, with the advent of COVID-19 as well as the fighting in the Ukraine, there seems to be greater or renewed emphasis on food security. What is meant by food security, and why is it important? Why should the average St. Lucian concern herself with food security issues?
Well, food security is basically the ability of any country to feed itself and to provide enough food for its population and by extension, the large number of visitors who visit the island from time to time in the form of tourism and in the form of social visits from Caribbean and from the diaspora. We need to be able to feed ourselves, and we need to encourage our farmers to produce more of the foods we traditionally consume. And in the process too, we need to find a way to preserve a lot of the extra foods that we can use it in times of peril, in times of distress, in time of disaster. So generally, it's a very important topic for the island, and we need to be very conscious of the need to have enough food for ourselves.
Thank you. In addition to that, in terms of food security, I think they are also talking about nutrition. People being in St. Lucia, we may have people probably are eating enough energy foods, carbohydrates, but food security, they have also been talking about people eating a balanced diet, and partly because of us not eating a balanced diet, we now have an epidemic of non-communicable diseases such as diabetes and hypertension. They also talk about access to, we may have enough food on the island, and a country may have enough food, but not all of its people have access to that food in terms of being able to afford it. So affordability and balanced diet, since people are also talking, including these as part of the food security issues.
Well, affordability is not quite a big issue, as it is the desire of the population to consume our local foods and to introduce the palate for our local foods at an earlier age. As I grew up, I saw my parents, for example, feeding my younger siblings from the food that they consume at the family table, by crushing it and introducing them to the dashin, to the yams, and whatever it is that we consume. Now I think people are more prone to be feeding their children from imported canned foods and all kinds of preparations. And then at the end of the day, the children grow up with a palate for those imported foreign foods. So I think, and what I need to say to you, in my youth, most parents had what I call a kitchen garden. So we were able to produce a lot of the foods we need for our own consumption, and sold the extra at the Saturday morning markets throughout the island. That has probably taken a turn for the worse. We have some of it still happening, but we don't have enough of it. So I think the population should grow more into the custom of consuming local foods as much as possible, and pay less attention to the Kentucky Fried Chicken, the hamburgers, and things like that. I think, you know, these are foreign to us. And in fact, it inflates the economy because we are not producing not even the chicken used by Kentucky in their processes. So we need to look more at strengthening and encouraging our farmers to produce more of these foods. And I might introduce the question of youth in agriculture. If the young people are able to be strengthened and encouraged to go into local food production, the possibility that we are going to avoid this constant consumption of imported foods will be minimized.
Later in the program, we hope to speak some more about the youth in agriculture. I think the Prime Minister, Philippe J. Pierre, will be happy with your take on the food security issues in terms of us consuming our local produce, because here is what he had to say recently on us consuming more bananas and other locally produced foods as a means of addressing our food security problem, reducing our import bill, and advancing our agricultural sector.
So I said, we must try, while we are trying to send our bananas to Europe, to England in particular, we should try to see if we can send regional bananas. But shipping is difficult for regional to send because there are not enough ships for regional bananas. So we should try to consume more of our own. I said we should try in our school feeding program if we can have a banana day. I further said, if you look at the NBA, you see athletes eating bananas during break. I said there are a lot of varieties of recipes that you can do with bananas. And then I said there are other things, banana flour, banana bread, you can use the leaves. So I said we should try to consume, not only eat, but consume it, use it more in its different facets. Now, tell me something. Do you see there is anything wrong in saying that?
So, Mr. Elias, obviously the Prime Minister agrees with you. So eating more bananas, can this be part of the solution to our banana production and export problems? And more generally, is consuming more of what we produce a solution to our food security problems? Apparently, it seems both you and the Prime Minister is on the same page.
Yes, the Prime Minister is on point, and of course, you know, the Prime Minister is a local man, born and bred in St. Louis, so he understands the need to encourage our people to eat more of the foods that our farmers have the capacity to produce. On bananas, well, this is a used crop. We use bananas in a variety of food preparations. We do banana porridge. We use bananas, you know, in all kind of baking recipes. So generally speaking, I think the Prime Minister's vision for the agricultural sector is good, and more particularly, the Prime Minister is very passionate about the youth economy, and I hope in his forthcoming budget that there's going to be enough budgetary provisions for actually establishing the youth economy, because this is the one sector we need to have the youth gravitate to is in agricultural production. And what we need to do is to let the youth see the possibility of earning a good income from bananas and other food production needs. And as you know, in most countries of the world, the farming sector accounts for a large percentage of the wealth of the country by producing foods on a consistent and sustainable basis. So I agree with the Prime Minister, and we need to put a mechanism in place to strengthen the youth of the country.
Yes, the other point that bears out of the Prime Minister's statement is that the banana, our approach to the banana is mainly to eat it as a fruit and as a vegetable. But the banana has many other uses from the stems. All parts of the banana seems to have some use. Now, you have visited Cuba and gained exposure to its agricultural production systems. And from reading your book, it seems there are lessons to be learned from the Cuban experience with regard to banana cultivation and utilization. So could you share the Cuban experience with regard to how they use bananas, which seems to be related to the Prime Minister's statement?
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. I'm glad you've read my book in a very comprehensive manner. Well, the Cuban experience is very instructive. I remember delivering a speech in Paris on agriculture and bananas when the Cuban ambassador said to me, "Nice speech, Minister, but you guys have missed the boat. In Cuba, the banana stem is more valuable than the fruit." And I kind of was taken aback. And he says, we produce a number of byproducts from the banana stem and the fruit. And from the stem we produce 4 or 5 medicinal compounds. One is acetan, one is Nutrisol, and a couple of others. And these are produced from the juice of the pseudostem. They produce rope from the remnants from the stem. They produce banana ice cream, banana essence, and a whole host of other byproducts from bananas. And we're nowhere near there yet. And I went to Cuba after I demitted office from 2001. And I tried to get the system here to adopt the Cuban model. Unfortunately, we've not been able to do so. And I hope now that the Prime Minister is in a mode of strengthening agriculture, that some effort is going to be made to emulate some of the programs done by Cuba with bananas. And the question of the use of bananas, I've already said that there's a multiplicity of use that can be applied to the industry. And of course, the youth economy, I go back to it because that is my hope for the island. I hope that this youth economy would be able to specifically direct young people to see agriculture and agro-processing as a possible means of creating employment for themselves. And that is the key.
Yes.
I can see you are anxious to talk more about the youth in agriculture. This must be one of your passions, apparently. And rightly so, because from what I'm told, the average age of farmers in agriculture is around 60 years. Is that correct?
That is about correct. And as these older farmers exit the industries, we need to create a cadre of younger farmers who would venture into agriculture. And the problem with the youth venturing in agriculture is related basically that they don't see many successful older farmers emerging from the industries. And at the state level, at the policy level, we have not prioritized agriculture as a priority of which we finance in terms of higher learning. We're producing a lot of university graduates and other scientists in the system, but we're producing less farmers and less agricultural economists and less agricultural technologists. So we need to look at that and go back to a system where we're producing more artisans from the system, builders, masons, carpenters, and farmers. And until we can give priority to that kind of training, and I say indoctrination, we're not going to have a successive line of young people going into agriculture. We need to promote agriculture as an as a worthy enterprise from which the youth can see that they can make a good income. So I'm passionate about the support for young people in agriculture. I'm support and the support of the modernization of the sector. We do not expect the young people of St. Lucia to venture into agriculture by using the pickaxe, the cutlass, and the hoe anymore. We need to find the equipment, the technologies that is available throughout the world. And I think the Taiwanese support for our agriculture is most instructive. We should use more of the technologies used by Taiwan to produce food for its people in our agriculture, so that the youth can see that this back-breaking agricultural system is not the only way. And of course, you know, as a government, as a former policymaker, I have always advocated on the need for a cohesive policy for agriculture. I often said during my tenure that there can be no sustainable agricultural policy without priority being given to the provision of water for irrigation. We should see water for farm irrigation as important as water for human consumption. During my tenure in Martinique, the dams, the principal water sources, provided two pipelines. One which we treat for human consumption, and the other is raw water, which we provide for agricultural use wherever it was necessary, at a low rate, so that farmers can be encouraged to use it to irrigate their farms. If you do not have water to irrigate, no matter what you produce, you're not going to have a successful yield, and it's going to frustrate you. So we have to make the production of foods more attractive, easier to manage, and I believe the future is in agriculture. We normally speak of agriculture, but we do not do what we have to do to actualize a system of inclusiveness, a system where, just as we see the possibilities in technology, the possibilities in medicine, law, as being one of the attractive professions. So we need to give greater priority to it. And of course, we need to develop the question of a land bank, where young farmers can be given access to land. The majority of the largest states in this country have gone out of food production completely. In fact, they've gone out of agriculture completely, preferring to develop their lands for tourism, for residential, and for other areas. And they have actually inflated the price of land beyond the reach of the youth. So this is an area the Prime Minister and his Minister of Agriculture must look at. And I have heard the Minister of Agriculture saying some positive things about agriculture. And I hope that he follows up on the things that he's saying. Okay.
So, so part of the solution to advancing our agricultural sector and addressing our food security issues is to get youth, to entice youth into agriculture. And to do that, I think you are saying, we need to make agriculture more sexy by mechanizing agriculture. Irrigation is essential for year-round production and for improved yields. And we need to train people in agriculture, give agricultural scholarships, and so forth and so on, so that the young people understand we are prioritizing agriculture. And one of the ways we are prioritizing agriculture is to reserve scholarships for people who want to study agriculture. And there is a lot of arable land that is vacant because, as you said, a lot of the large farmers, especially the large farms, have abandoned agriculture. And there may be a lot of idle land, but it is not owned by the young people. So the issue of the land bank is important to give young people access to land, to farm. I think these are all very good points you have raised. But in terms of the youth in agriculture, let me play a clip that I would like you to react to, because that clip speaks to how we implement some of our policies. For example, how we go about getting youth in agriculture can affect the success of that initiative. So let's listen to that clip.
There's this program that was started many years ago where the government was trying to get young people into farming. So what they tried to do was to reserve certain government lands for young people between the ages of 18 to 45 so that they could get into crop production and other aspects of agriculture. Now, this project was a success to some, because what happened is the few young people that were serious, they were able to get something done, get some production done. But there were some people in that project who were never serious from day one. Because what we had a situation where some people were allocated agricultural lands based on their political affiliation. Some people found out that they were going to allocate lands to them and they were going to be given resources like inputs and probably agricultural equipment and irrigation equipment and things like that. So some people, because they were affiliated with the political party that was in power at that particular time, they got favors, they were placed on this project, and they were never interested in agriculture in the first place. So what we had was, some of them started well, and when they really came face to face with the normal shortcomings and the normal problems that we normally face in agriculture, some of them ran and they left. Now, what I am proposing is simple. You cannot beat dead horses. We have to produce in this country. We cannot continue importing what we can produce easily in the place. So what I'm proposing to the government and to even the citizens of the country is that the young people who are serious about farming, encourage them and give them the strength. But there are people who are older than the 45-year mark that you have. You need to give those farmers who are into farming, who are older than 45, who are in their 50s, allocate more lands to them if it is that they are good farmers. If it is that those guys have a track record of production and they know how to produce, allocate the lands to them instead.
Yes, Mr. Elias, sorry. The commentator in this clip seems to be saying, while we are implementing our youth program, getting youth in agriculture, let us be careful not to discriminate against age, gender, and so forth, and political affiliation. Let us, and maybe this is a problem that plague our society, where we do have those great programs that to develop the country, to advance the economy, but then these programs sometimes are used to employ people who supported the political party. So this is one kind of discrimination, and if we are focusing on the youth at the exclusion of more mature people in terms of agriculture, then we may be discriminating against older persons and thereby undermining the success of the effort to increase production. So what are your thoughts? What are your reaction to these commentators?
Well, the commentator is on point. I think he made some very useful points about how we cause young people to gravitate to agriculture. I think the point about getting the young people to be affiliated with older farmers is a good one. It reminds me of our system of apprenticeship, where young people were actually placed to learn skills from older craftsmen and other persons. The Labour Party, in its last tenure in office, began to assign young people under its Proud project to, not Proud, under its, one of its projects in any case, to work and understudy older farmers throughout the country. I think this was discontinued, unfortunately, by the last government. I hope this new government, with its focus on youth participation, not only in agriculture, in the area of national development, will look at a comprehensive policy where the older farmers can be encouraged to pass on their skills and knowledge to the younger farmers and provide a regular income stream from the activity of farming, so that one can see that there is a future, there's a financial gain to be derived from agriculture.
Yes. I think that's a very good point. Pairing young people with mature farmers with experience. I think this sounds like a winning approach, a winning solution. Now, Mr. Elias, it seems in the past and even up to now, there is such a great emphasis on bananas, and sometimes at the expense of other crops. And of course, agriculture, food production is not just bananas or even not just crops. There is also livestock, fisheries. Is our bias towards bananas preventing us from taking advantage of other opportunities in agriculture? And how would you develop, what are the potential for developing the livestock sector, the fisheries sector, and so forth? What are your thoughts?
But basically, Doc, the banana sector is the succeeding agricultural activity from sugar. And in the beginning, you had the largest states of the country producing the bulk of our bananas. And as you know, the largest states were generally owned by foreign investors, yes, foreign entrepreneurs.
Geese, for example.
And geese, for example. Geese provided a good service for the island in that it began to market our bananas in the UK. But what geese did after some time is that it stopped producing its own bananas on its holdings and began to subdivide those lands for on sale to farmers who were prepared to go into bananas. And of course, the banana industry provided substantial income and opportunity for a large cross-section of the population. those farmers were producing bananas on small family holdings. Their limitation is that they could not use those holdings as collateral for financing to support their activities in the industry. But nevertheless, they prevailed, and before long, you had a good market, and the banana became green gold, as we say.
Yes.
So everyone was benefiting from the industry. The women, principally, were entering into a new area of wealth and independence. And the World Trade Organization dealt a very severe blow to the industry when they basically challenged the preferential treatment enjoyed by the Lomé producers in Martinique, Spain, Africa, and the Caribbean. And of course, the challenge to the preferential treatment was upheld by the WTO. So those countries were quick to find a loophole to allow us to continue to export to them. But our bananas became a little more expensive without the concessions on the Lomé. And the Americans began to support their investors who were producing in Latin America. They were not producing bananas on American soil, but they were giving support to their farmers, to their farmer entrepreneurs,
yes,
producing bananas in Latin America. And those bananas were a lot cheaper than our bananas, because we had not mechanized our system to the extent where we could lower our cost of production, so that without the Lomé concessions and preferential treatment, we had a problem remaining on the market. What kept us on the the English market is that the English housewives sometimes preferred our bananas. We produce a kind of near organic bananas, and we were producing a light 3/4 grade of bananas, meaning that the fingers were smaller, and it was preferred by the English housewife. Instead of half a banana, they were able to put a small banana in their toolkit, their lunch kit for their children. And we became a sort of niche producer, if you like. We still have that opportunity, but different or various impediments have been able to almost marginalize us from that British market. And now we're looking at the Caribbean market as a substitute for the English market. I wish that process some success. But I think what we need to do is to continue to try and protect that British market. But we need to do what we should have done before, is to strengthen the non-banana sector. Your traditional tubers, your traditional food crops, your traditional vegetables, and those items which the farmers, old and young, have developed the capacity to produce as input substitutions, because we need to stop the idea of importing our food needs from abroad because they tend to be cheaper. We need to give our farmers the technological strength and the marketing strength to be able to ensure that more of the people on island and the visitors to the island are encouraged to consume the foods that we have the capacity to produce. In some cases, our production costs may be a little higher than that which is being imported. But as we structure our mechanism, our mechanical production systems, we would find that our production costs will be reduced a little bit. So we need to we need to refocus. And also, you know, agro-processing, we need to find a way to transform our products into items that can be preserved, that can be kept for later use. So generally we are saying the right thing, and we have been saying the right thing for a number of years. What we need to do now, that the reality has come home to the need to operationalize and implement and monitor our production activities, that soon from now we are going to be producing a lot more foods for ourselves. And of course, if you look at the tourism industry, every day we feed over 5,000 people. Can you imagine if the St. Lucian farmers, like the Jamaican farmers of old, would be producing 75% at least of all the food needs of that industry? We could be creating an industry that would propel the St. Lucian economy to unimaginable heights. And that is where we have to go.
Yes. Very good. But I was a cadet at Union School of Agriculture way back in 1976, 1977. And even back then, there was much talk and emphasis on agricultural diversification, intercropping, other cash crops with the bananas and coconut. There was much talk about agribusiness, agro-processing, converting our fruits into juices, jams. Indeed, there was a food processing lab run by the likes of Martin Evans that had already created a long list of products ready for commercialization. Yet today, it doesn't seem we have made much headway along those lines. We are still just talking about it. We are still saying there is potential. We are still saying agriculture is a solution to some of our poverty and unemployment problems. And we have known that, as I said, for 30, 50 years. So, and we are just still talking about it now. And it seems like we only become concerned or when we are facing crises, like, for example, COVID-19, the war in the Ukraine. What is the problem? What is preventing us from taking bold steps to solving our agricultural issues, our food production problems? You have been in the belly of the beast as a Minister of Agriculture, and so on, and you have been a businessman. So maybe you can throw some light as to what about the dynamics of our country, our ministry, our government, that prevents them from taking bold steps to solve pressing problems.
Yes, Doc, you know, someone called me a few weeks ago and said to me, "Cass, you have goat's tongue." I said, "What do you mean by that?" He says, "Well, you know, I read your book, Enough is Enough, and in 2000 you said in the Parliament of St. Lucia some very interesting things about food security and the need for St. Lucia to consume more of the foods that we produce," and you went on about it. But then you said about the next war. You particularly said you were not a prophet of gloom and doom, but if the next war were to start soon, we would be one of the first nations or regions in the world to starve, because all the channels would be blocked, the ships bringing our goods would not be able to come in, and we would be left without enough food to feed ourselves. When I spoke of a war, I was thinking of a physical war at the time. And what has happened is that we've had the COVID pandemic,
yes,
which is a biological war. And on top of the pandemic, we now have the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which is threatening another war. So we are forced to refocus on our food needs. And Dr., one of the things I've often said, and I continue to say it all the time, that we are a reactive people. We've not been proactive. We talk about the system. I mean, I had a passion for certain things in agriculture during my tenure. But the supporting services seems to fail the country. The extension officers, the extension division of the Ministry of Agriculture, that is a division that needs substantial review to ensure that those extension officers who are trained agricultural personnel are committed to creating successful farmers. During my tenure, I was particular to visit farms all over the country, and I would say to the extension officer guiding me through the process, take me to a successful farmer that you have created. And he would say things to me that did not support my vision or my enthusiasm to see successful farmers. And of course, unfortunately, I did one term in Parliament. If I had done 2 terms, I would have privatized that extension service to make sure that we create an environment where the extension services who are trained agriculturists would be forced to actually practice agriculture in an environment where farmers could come and see a successful farm. In St. Lucia now, you have very few successful farmers. You have Christopher Cox, you have Murky Xavier now, a young farmer, who are producing various food crops and vegetable crops on a sustainable basis.
Okay.
With improved technologies. And I would like to see, now that the country is more focused and more concerned about its food needs, begin to implement policies where in each of the regions of the country you would deliberately support a few successful farmers so that the young people whom we are trying to encourage into agriculture could visit those establishments and see that there is some possibilities for them if they should venture into agriculture. Young scientists, for example, when the sargassum seaweed became a problem in St. Lucia, we had a young man who began to produce a liquid chemical out of the seaweed.
Yes.
I have been doing all I can to see if I can contact him. Nobody seems to know where he is. Now that we're talking about the youth economy, that young boy should be found. Okay. Government joint venture with him and give him the capacity to expand that knowledge and that production techniques. I think he received a couple of awards from international organizations. But we need to get this young man to remain in that industry, remain in that mode, and be a model for other young people who can use our raw materials to greater use.
Thanks for that. Roof Tropics Media will locate him and probably bring him on the show. Well, we are down to our last 9 minutes, Mr. Elias. We still have a lot more to discuss, but we have been talking about bananas and more crop production. What are your thoughts on the fisheries sector and the livestock sector?
Yes.
What is required there?
Look, what is required there? There's in the fisheries sector, there is a base already, and what I would like to see is that we encourage more young fishermen to go into the industry and give them the capacity and support them to be able to own their own boats. In the past, when I became Minister of Agriculture, we had a system where most of the young fishermen were employed by boat owners. You had a strong boat owner culture. And we had 10 boats sitting in the harbor in Castries, and they were too expensive for the average young fisherman to afford. So I went to Cabinet with a memo to reduce the price of those boats so that the young fishermen could afford to purchase one. I remember one of my agricultural officers or fisheries officers said to me, "But Minister, if you do that, every little boy can buy a boat." And I thought, but you know, sir, this is our policy. This is our wish that every young person participating in the industry can own their own boats so that they can develop and become a better fisherman. And with support from us, then the rest can be history. So I am proud to say that during my tenure, we built the View Fort Fisheries Complex, which is one of the biggest fisheries complexes in the Caribbean. I built the Choiseul complex. We were in the process of building a complex in Micoud and Slurry. I think those were high fish catch areas. I think Soufrière was already in the process. Labry is another area, Dennery, and View Fort. And over the years, I have seen the fisheries sector marginalized in favor of all kinds of activities. I think the Japanese and the Canadians are still our friends, so to speak. And yes. I think they have the willingness to support our fisheries culture. And I think we need to pay greater attention to the needs of that sector, because that sector has the capacity to produce fish, to make St. Lucia self-sufficient.
Yes.
At a very quick time. So we need to focus on that sector. And fish has become a very popular diet item.
Yeah, health conscious.
On our plates as health conscious people. And given that we have the number of tourists coming into St. Lucia, we could propel that industry into a very profitable venture. Like agriculture, fisheries must be properly structured so that the young people can see a future in that industry. And I think we have all the infrastructure necessary to move the fisheries sector forward. And like agriculture, the youth industry should also invest in those sectors to make it attractive to young people. The future of both agriculture and fisheries is based on our seriousness about making it attractive to young people and giving young people the right incentives to allow them to produce with greater ease. They have to see that they can make money out of their fishing activities. They have to see that they can make money out of their agricultural activities. And they have to be trained appropriately from a very early stage.
True. Mr. Elias, we have 4 minutes left. But before you go, I would like to ask you one last question. If the Prime Minister, Philippe J. Pierre, give you a shout and ask you to head its agricultural advancement program, what will be the top 4 things you would implement? If you had a magic wand and you could just implement 4, what would that be to
I suppose the Prime Minister has so many technical people
but it's like,
around him. But if he were to ask me to assist in any area, the areas that I would be interested in assisting the country in is in the area of agriculture and fisheries, because those are 2 areas I believe that has the best potential for providing wealth for the country, providing wealth for young people. But the government has got to implement a system of technical support, a system of financial support, a system of monitoring, to the point where everyone in the agricultural sector can fully make a good income for themselves. In the fisheries sector, we need to improve the boats that is used in that sector. We need to improve the security of the fishermen themselves when they go out to fish. We need to improve the marketing support that both sectors need. So I would say that these are the areas I'm most passionate about, and
Okay.
I know the current Minister of Agriculture is also passionate about those areas. We have met, we've discussed many things.
Thank you, Mr. Elias. We have run out of time. It was a pleasure having you on the show. I enjoyed the conversation. As you know, my background, my degrees are in agricultural economics, and I did a diploma in general agriculture at Union School of Agriculture. So it was a great delight being enlightened on agricultural issues. Thank you, St. Lucia, the diaspora, for tuning in, and we promise to always inform, educate, enlighten. So thank you very much. Mr. Elias, anything you want to say to your listeners?
Well, I wish people like you would gravitate back into agriculture, because it is people like you that we would like to support and encourage the youth to venture into the agriculture, and people like you can give them greater support in the technology, in the management of the farming systems, and I hope that the government will train young persons more and more in the fisheries sector and the agricultural sector, and give them the kind of incentive they need to remain in the sector. They have to see the sector as a worthy enterprise that would enable them to make a good living like everybody else.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, greetings everyone. Great to have you on the show. It was indeed a pleasure. We will continue having excellent guests to speak to you, converse with you. We will also be speaking with guests from the diaspora. We promise to have a mixed, we promise not to discriminate. We promise to bring young people, men as ladies as well as guys, people of all ages, and people from St. Lucia from the diaspora, to present a nice mix. But always we promise to be substantive, in depth, and to bring you as much information on the subject matter as possible. Thank you very much.